This is an audio-only preview of the Ravens Week 12 matchup against the New York Jets. It's a very unusual game and dynamic, if you ask me, at this point in the season for the Ravens to be 5-5 now after starting 1-5, and now looking at a game against the Jets as a possible letdown or setup game, I guess. It's really kind of implausible and unusual dynamic to understand because we're trying to get over 500 ourselves, so we've not established anything. The reality is we all know the Jets have been really terrible on offense, to the tune of only 21 points per game, while putting up just 140 passing yards per game. To get to that number takes some effort. It's the worst in the NFL over the season-long average. It's worse than the Browns, right? And even the Browns total is partially as a result of, while Joe Flacco was still in Cleveland, he had a 290-yard passing output game. So their number is really pulled up. But this is just another week where we're facing a team that simply cannot throw the football effectively. Now, this time it'll apparently be Tyrod Taylor, which is another full circle moment that also involves Flacco. We played against him in week 2. May end up playing against him on Thursday. At this point, I think Joe Burrow, has been ruled out for week 12. Taylor is 36 years old, played in Baltimore for 4 seasons, actually was on the Super Bowl team along with Joe, which is kind of crazy to be talking about him and Flacco 13 years later. Anyway, Taylor's got 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, while filling in for Justin Fields at various times over the course of 2025. Now he's taken over as a starter after Fields put up 2 really subpar games offensively coming out of their bye. Now, since that time, or during that time, I should say, the Jets have traded away Quinnen Williams to Dallas, Sauce Gardner to Indianapolis. And now they have, I believe they're sitting on 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks for the 2026 NFL Draft. Top-heavy, but I think we can see where they're going, at this point, probably for a quarterback, or if there is one worthy of being taken at number 1. As an aside or related to the passing yardage output, Baltimore's only at 180 per game in 2025. Far too low for all the talent we have on offense. How much of that do you attribute to the offensive line? Certainly some. The majority of it probably. Todd Monken, perhaps some. Lamar Jackson, the other quarterbacks. We still have a lot of season left. And now a defense that's capable of giving us chances to either, get the football back more often or not be in such a hurry to score, because we now know that our defense can make stops. There's some opportunity to boost our numbers up. 180 passing yards per game, extremely low for the Ravens. I think the bottom 4 or 5 in the league. And look, in recent weeks, that's kind of been the number when Lamar's returned. 204 on the road against Miami. 176 in the second road win in a row against the Vikings. And then 193 last week in the struggle in the division against the Browns. Now, compare that to earlier in the year. Things were not actually like this. We're at 240 per game passing yards through 3 weeks. Those are somewhat normal. In fact, that would be like 6th or 7th in the NFL right now if we kept those numbers up, 240 per game. I think the offense has a chance to, A, be given the ball more frequently in better field position, and possibly, through turnovers as well. That dynamic has totally changed for us since Kyle Hamilton has been moved up as the nickel defender. Basically, I think the offense will be in more advantageous positions than we were earlier in the year, and we won't have to play a conservative style all the time. We have relied on it, I think, in recent weeks. Do we have to use that against the Jets? No. Having said that, they are at minus 11 turnover margin. Primarily because they've only got 1 takeaway all year. I'm talking about the Jets. Only 1 defensive takeaway, which is kind of shocking to see. For the Ravens, we're at minus 2. And that's after a 3 turnover performance against the Browns, one of which was the pick 6 on the drop screen by Keaton Mitchell in the second quarter, and then the short pass from Lamar that was going to be over the middle that hits off Roger Rosengarten's helmet, I think, in the third quarter. It would be fantastic to see this team get +1 or +2 later today against the Jets, but specifically in the first half. The longer that we can make them one-dimensional and have a lead at the same time, the better, because they do have Breece Hall at running back. He's very talented, tough. He's got 722 rushing yards on the year, two touchdowns. So he's behind Derrick Henry's pace, 800 yards and 4.9 per carry for Henry, 722 and 4.8 for Breece Hall. First of all, that just tells you how amazing the Derrick Henry story actually is, because we've been operating at a deficit or uphill, so to speak, with our offensive line, but Henry's still got numbers that's going to put him well over 1,000 at some point. I do wonder, as far as the Jets go, how much of Hall's numbers were influenced actually in a positive way by having a running quarterback like Fields. The option game, basically. Fields had 383 or 382 on the ground before he was taken out and replaced by Taylor. So there's a drastically different situation there, or maybe a dynamic is a better way to put it. Taylor was once athletic, but at this point, he's 36 years old. He'll now be going into his first action as a starter since, I think, late October. He stepped foot on the field to replace Fields and went like 10 for 22 passing, I believe, late October. Now, as far as the Ravens go and the matchup against the Jets offense, I think you would have to say that things look promising. We've been on a tear defensively lately. I want to let some stats flow. Now, these are not typical game stats. This is a metric that I've referred to multiple times that I believe at this point gives you a pretty good indication as to how a team is playing. It was originally created to talk about offensive efficiency. And so the stats that you see on the screen are some of the ones that I'm kind of highlighting is where we rank for average yards per play. Number 10, rush yards per carry. Number 2, which is considered elite. On over to the right, turnovers per game, sacks per game allowed, which is 3 at this point, and then first downs per game. Those are the 3 that are really below average. Red zone touchdown percentage being extremely poor. Why do I bring this up? Well, I'm going to show you some comparison points for our defense, what they've been able to do earlier in the season, I think first 5 games, and then since Kyle Hamilton has been moved up to the line as a dedicated nickel DB. Our TOR metric for the season offensively is 54.9, so not very good. Not compared to 2024. But our defense has this separated, distinct cutoff for when Hamilton is playing the back safety along with Starks versus up front as a dedicated nickel. So here's what I mean. Kind of let me explain a little bit. The currently highlighted column is our TOR offensive efficiency, total offense efficiency rating on a 0 to 100 scale. So you can see we have 3 excellent games here, 80, 82, and 86. The last 2 weeks, wins on the road, against the Vikings, and last week in Cleveland, not so good, 52 and 42. I really don't bring these stats up to talk about our offense too much in this case. Specifically heading into the Jets game, what I really want to do is kind of highlight or talk about the difference in what our defense has been able to do, specifically the last 5 weeks, but really focusing on these 3 road wins in a row. Miami, Minnesota, and Cleveland. We allowed 15, 29, and 0 efficiency rating for those offenses. Those numbers there would be top 5 in the league, probably top 3 at this point, if we were able to post them over the course of the first 10 games of 2025, or even moving on to the rest of the regular season. Basically, the idea here is here's how poor those games are. Well, excuse me. Here's how impressive those games are for our defense and how poor it is for the opposing team's offenses. Those 2 numbers I have squared off there, 31 and 26. Those are the last 2 games where Cooper Rush played quarterback. The number below that, 82, that's when we had Tyler Huntley on the field at quarterback and we defeated the Bears. So think of the quality of play or lack thereof for our offense in those 2 games against the Texans and the Rams with Cooper Rush at quarterback. Our offensive efficiency rating was a 31 and a 26. Now go back and look over to the final column, the one to the right of that, the last 3 games. 15, 29, 0. All on the road against the Dolphins, the Vikings, and the Browns, neither one of which is probably going to be a playoff team, but we're facing similar talent today, in my opinion, or even worse to an extent. The idea here is try to emphasize how spectacular we've been overall with Kyle Hamilton as the dedicated nickel. Those last 5 games, of course, the first of which was against the Rams, a home loss 17-3. But if you were able to separate out or average, and you can feel free to do so here if you want to, the first 5 games versus the last 5, the difference is striking. And I'll scroll up in a moment and show you guys our overall score for the whole season as far as TOR allowed or offensive efficiency allowed. For the last 5 games, you're looking at an average of 25.2 allowed. Significant, everything is trending in the right direction. Third down percent allowed, success rate for the offense, first downs, even though Minnesota was able to generate 23. The point is, we're getting people off the field more consistently, number one, and at the same time, we've been able to force turnovers. I think that's a huge factor against some of these average to above average offenses. We cannot rely on turnovers. I remember the whole, would you rather be first in the league in 3 and outs, or would you rather be first in the league at forcing turnovers? For the regular season, sure, go ahead and pick turnovers. In the playoffs, you're not going to consistently force turnovers against the best offenses in the NFL. We are at 25.2 efficiency allowed for the last 5 weeks. For the season, it's 53. A huge departure or huge difference, the first 5 games versus the last 5. It's not to say that the Jets don't bring some offensive talent to Baltimore, right? Adonai Mitchell came over in the Colts trade. Hall is definitely going to get a lot of touches. I think he's got 152 carries in 10 games played, so an average of 15.2 per game. I would expect him to get more today. I think they've got to shorten the game. And they've also got to hope that we make mistakes offensively or maybe allow some big plays. It'll be an interesting dynamic as I record this. Will McDonald and Harrison Phillips are both classified as questionable. Phillips was the guy that was brought over from Minnesota. He was a dominant force at times as a nose tackle, D tackle for the Vikings. Super athletic for a really big guy. Caused the Lions a lot of trouble in the last few years, trying to run the football at times. He would have a big impact if he's able to go on Sunday against the interior of the Ravens offensive line. I guess the original plan for the Jets was to pair Harrison Phillips with Quinnen Williams, who, like I said, they've, of course, traded away. I think for the Ravens, our focus should be to get an extended lead as early as possible. So from that standpoint, there'll be something I'll say here that'll be a little bit contradictory. But basically, with a tough stretch to end the season here, I'd like to see certain guys get off the field as soon as possible. And I don't care what anyone says. If the Bengals are going to go out there Thursday night with Joe Burrow, if he's ready to go, and we have to face him a second time in Cincinnati, even though their defense is really, really horrible, that's not an easy end to the season at all when you include the games against the Steelers and then games against the Packers and the Patriots. But more on that later. I think playing smart is of more importance, meaning basically take the points when we have those chances, even if it means we're up only 9-0 at the half. I will say this. In the first quarter, if we want to go ahead and go for it on 4th down to try to get a touchdown, I understand that. Especially if, let's say we're up 3-0 on the second possession and we're trying to get a score and we want to go up 10-0, I get it, because we would anticipate stopping their offense consistently. Where I will deviate or switch up a little bit in terms of my perspective is the second quarter and beyond. And this is partially reactionary to what I watched occur last week with the Lions. Basically, they forfeited 2 obviously high percentage chances to score against the Eagles. A 4th down from the 32-yard line, which I think will be a 49-yard field goal, and then a 4th down from inside the 5. Now, they're down 13-6 at the time. Could have been 13-9 or even 13-12, right? I get it. Some people would say, well, if you score, then you're up 14-13. Fine. Well, it didn't happen, number one. Number two, they were 0 for 5 going against the Eagles. This Jets defense, not the same thing. That dynamic last week with the Lions kind of reminded me of that 2021, 2002 timeframe where Harbaugh made, a series of dumb, poor decisions on 4th down because we were so hungry, and most of them failed. That's the thing about analytics. So many people say you should go for it, but what happens when it fails? They still say, well, the failures don't matter. It's about the chances. No, they do matter. You're an idiot if you don't think that they matter in the context of, do you actually have a chance to succeed here in doing this? And if you fail 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a row, you shouldn't make the same decision on the 7th one. Well, actually, it shouldn't be a 7th one. But in any case, our defense is playing well. And so early, first quarter, I don't mind if we go for it, to go for a touchdown. There does come a point in time for me where I think we just got to stack points and let them hopefully make mistakes. We forced 9 turnovers since Hamilton has moved to the nickel. A couple of things in this game that I'm really interested to see is how, like, Draymond Jones, Kyle Van Noy, Mike Green, who apparently will play, how they match up with Membao, the rookie, the 21-year-old rookie, in fact, who's a first-round pick for the Jets. He's played almost every snap so far. I think they do have an interesting return game. I've kind of resigned myself to not showing film in many of the previews at all. They took 2 back to the house in the Week 10 win over the Browns, 27-20. And then, we were just in a battle with Cleveland last week, so there's some evidence on paper that we're evenly matched. But, we all know that that's not reality. That's a stretch. MMA math, as they say, doesn't work. Isaiah Williams took a punt back to the house against the Browns. And then Kina, I think it's Wangu, returned a kickoff, 99 yards for a touchdown in the same game. Actually, both of those were in the first half. The scheme that they use on kick return is kind of cool. I can't bring myself to show it here. A, I don't want to break down kick return film. But B, doing so for a preview kind of doesn't make sense. But there does seem to be a certain guide that they follow in terms of their returns. We absolutely have to avoid turnovers on offense and can't allow them any big special teams plays like those, because that would, cut into or chop down our talent differential. And also those things could give them a chance to score when our defense isn't on the field. Basically, I think our defensive intensity and commitment could grind them down, and our offense and special teams can't do anything to kind of circumvent that dynamic, if you will. I have no sense at all about what Tyrod Taylor brings here, given their inability to get things done on offense without Garrett Wilson. Obviously, it's been a big loss for them in their passing game. Taylor's definitely on a different end of the spectrum, though, than the last 3 quarterbacks we faced, right? Even though Tua has been around for a while, I think the processing ability of Taylor and recognition is at a different level, and then that brings me to kind of a different dynamic. I think this is more so similar to the Chicago game than Miami and Minnesota, and here's what I mean. The offensive coordinator for the Jets is Tanner, I think it's Engstrand. He came over to New York with Aaron Glenn from Detroit. Now, so this will be the 3rd game where we face someone from that system. Obviously, week 3, we gave up 426 yards of offense to the actual Lions, coordinated at that time by John Morton, who still is the offensive coordinator, but he's since been removed of his play calling duties. Then the Bears, we did defeat them 30-16. Of course, their head coach / play caller, Ben Johnson. They had chances to score on us, especially earlier in the game. They had to settle for field goals, I think, twice. So this will be the 3rd time that we're facing either someone who calls plays for the Lions or called plays for the Lions in John Morton in week 3, or Ben Johnson, who we defeated a couple of weeks later. And then now Engstrand, who I think was the tight ends coach. So I'm really interested to see. I think he was the tight ends coach in Detroit, I'm interested to see what we get from a personnel and a formation standpoint. Do we get any repetitive plays, any plays or concept that, those teams have already used against us, that possibly Engstrand has communicated with them and or observed that they work under the same system. Like I said in the initial lead-in, to have a great chance, right, to get above 500 is a real blessing. We have a 6-game stretch to finish the season thereafter. 2 games against the Patriots and Packers. Well, 1 game each, I guess. Those 2 teams have combined for 15 wins. They're also scoring 24 and 26 points per game. Both of those games are going to be difficult. That's not to mention the 4 games against the Bengals and the Steelers. It's very possible that Joe Burrow returns on Thursday night. That game's in Baltimore, thankfully. Who knows? Maybe they won't want to on a short week, especially if they suffer another loss this week. The season is pretty much over for the Bengals at this point or at that point, but their defense is so poorly, they're not going anywhere anyway. My point is, even though we're in must-win now mode, I don't think that means that we need TDs the whole game. Just take points here. And the justification for that mentality, other than the first quarter to try to get on top of them to get ahead, is this. The Jets did score 39 points in the Week 8 road win against the Bengals, okay? Fields threw for a season-high 244 in that matchup. First of all, that does tell us how terrible Cincinnati's pass defense actually is. But also, if you kind of extrapolate some of that out, over the last 5 games, what the Jets have done offensively, without Garrett Wilson generally, incredibly poor. Now, I'm not going to omit the Bengals game in the numbers. We'll kind of do it with and without. So last 5 games, Garrett Wilson, knee injury, I think week 5 or week 6, somewhere in there. Didn't play week 6, week 7. There's a 2-week stretch where he doesn't play, so it's included in this data. He actually did return and play briefly against the Browns and suffered a different knee injury at that time. We won't be facing him today, so the quality of the offense, it matters. If you ask me, it's comparable, I should say. Last 5 weeks, the Jets have scored 97 points. You say, Coach, that's like 20 points a game. That's right around their league average. But hidden within that data, first of all, is the 39 they scored against the Bengals. Cincinnati is last in the NFL, allowing 33 points per game. Number 1. Additionally, if you look at, in the win over the Browns, they returned 2 kicks for touchdowns. The kick return by Wangu, and then the punt return by Isaiah Williams. So if you separate out the Bengals game, and then the 2 special team scores against the Browns, and you just look at the 4 games outside of the Cincinnati Bengals win, again on the road, their offense has scored, I think it's 44 points in 4 games, so 11 points per game average. This, to me, should be a situation where we can hold them and get our offense back on the field quick. So the need to be touchdown-centric, try to get touchdowns instead of just points, is not that strong for me. Just get some points on the board. Stop Breece Hall. He's a talented guy who's, I think at this point, he's on pace for his first 1,000-yard season. In fact, if he keeps up his current rate, I believe he'll get to almost 1,100 or just above it. So they're definitely going to rely on him, right? We know that Zach Orr is going to be in a nickel platform on almost every snap. We're getting really great effort from the guys up front. The front 6/7, 7 being Hamilton as the nickel defender. To me, other than Lamar, Hamilton is the guy that I would want to see off the field at times. We can't necessarily take him off the field during actual gameplay. Keon Martin's out, who played really well last week, in my opinion. Marlon Humphrey, I guess, is going to return, which is kind of crazy as I record this. So Hamilton's not going to get that opportunity, basically. We're stressing Hamilton to the max by keeping him on the field 100% of the time and asking him to be so physical. He can take it, right? He'll be the best player on the field. Well, when the Jets have the football, that is. I would just like to see him get an opportunity to take the fourth quarter off along with Lamar and other guys because, A, we have a game on Thursday, and that dynamic I think is important, being able to win. And to me, in this game against the Jets, we really just need points. We don't have to be up 14-0. 9-0 would be kind of okay, if you ask me, but I recognize that other people feel differently and other people rely solely on analytics independent of a game situation, number 1, and number 2, the actual game flow, meaning when you, like, for example, to harken back on the Detroit Lions, when you've failed your last 4 fourth down conversions, what causes you as a coach to not be able to consider that when making the decision for the 5th? We're certainly not going to see that today with John Harbaugh and Todd Monken and Lamar Jackson at all. We'll make better decisions than that, number 1. Number 2, we'll probably not be relegated to fourth down conversions against this Jets team. It's just a mentality for me, in my opinion, that means we need points, especially early, no matter what type of score it is, to get on top of this team, and make them one-dimensional as quickly as possible. In my opinion, they'll try to shorten the game and lengthen the amount of time to which they can continue to try to run the ball. We've done a pretty good job of stopping the run for the most part under a nickel platform. In some cases, on second down early in the season, we really did struggle with that. Hamilton being moved up closer to the line of scrimmage has really kind of erased a lot of that so far in the last 4 or 5 weeks, but specifically the last 3 when we've been a totally different defense. And in this situation, we get another quarterback who's, you wouldn't anticipate that Tyrod Taylor is going to make some of the, quote, rookie mistakes the other guys have in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but you obviously would not attempt him to make a ton of throws with his arm strength and inability to push the ball down the field since they don't have a whole lot of weapons. In any case, appreciate you guys' time. If you enjoyed the video, then please let me, audio/video, then please let me know in the comment section, number one. Number two, if you think other Ravens fans would enjoy some of these final thoughts on the Week 12 matchup against the Jets, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.